To David and to Koa. There's a 6:20 minute. So I like to go to. It's in a tent. We have one of the shuls is in a tent. Thank you, sir. Very generous. All right. Whoever didn't have their bird feed yet for this morning. The early bird catches the worm, didn't we say? Okay. Joe?
Practice your skills if you want to look at place Shabbat.
It's it. It's a very Israeli cultural thing. You crack nuts. The professionals, they put the whole thing in their mouth and they can spit out the seeds. I don't know how to do that.
I did that, but I prefer the way the Israelis do it because you don't get all the salt. It's super salty.
Anyways, you feeling better? You the new diet?
Yeah, I think yesterday was the point where I don't know if it's like keto, but it's like one day where you're super sick and you get over the hill and then.
I didn't know that. No. Yeah. No. I'll have to talk about it. Seder Hananel! Nice to see you! Sunday morning! Bright and early! Oh, wait, it's Wednesday morning! Oh my gosh! Shame, but here we are. Glad you're back. Let's continue learning chapter 8. Hopefully we'll finish it today. We're learning about some other laws of the 3 weeks. Actually, the title of the chapter is the 3 weeks. But as we've been progressing on, we've been seeing more and more that the laws are only applying in the 9 days. Is our chart still on the board? No. Okay. Well, we described how there's a system. Let me share an idea with you that I like. And I like, so there is Avilut. What does Avilut mean? Avilut is mourning. In Halakha, there's 2 types. In the Talmud, it speaks about Avilut Yeshana. What's Yeshana mean? Old, Yashan. And there's Avilut Chadasha. Unfortunately, it's part of life. Chadash is new, right? Yeshana and Chadasha. So what's old mourning versus new mourning?
Maybe someone who has a Shalom died, and we mourn for them for the first year. And the old one is like the years passed by and you just want to stay.
Excellent. Absolutely. Evelut Chadasha, as we all know, people die and relatives sit Shiva, and then they say Kaddish. 11 months, there's a periods of mourning. That's called new mourning. It happens now. The parent dies, whoever it is. Unfortunately, we heard last night when a soldier was killed. His family now have mourning, period of mourning. That's Avilut Chadasha. What's Avilut Yeshana? Old mourning. So the best example is what we're talking about right now. We're discussing the laws of mourning for the temple, for the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. It's very old. It's 2,000 years old and more. If we go back to the origins, what happened on the 17th of Tammuz in the Chumash? Even before that, I'm talking about go back to the Chumash now. It's true that they breached the walls on the 17th of Tammuz. That's 2,000 years ago. All right. Also for the first temple, 2,500 years ago. Good. But what about 3,500 years ago? That's right. The sin of the golden calf, Moshe broke the tablets. That's 3,500 years ago. That's pretty old. We mourn for it now. So the way to look at this is essentially that there is a progression. Obviously, the sages realized that when your relative dies, you feel it very intensely. I remember when my father died. Allah shalom. It's already 14 years ago, something like that, maybe 15, I don't know. And I felt like I got punched in the stomach. You feel it. Hurts. And then as time goes on, you get used to the idea, life goes on, and you go back to your regular life, you still have a pain. But it starts off very intensely. So Nu Avelut, the diagram I think is like this. It starts off at the height, but then slowly but surely you sort of come back to life. And so we have this diagram which describes what it's like. The most intense is right at the beginning, when you hear the news, and then we have different periods. You might know that we have a period of the first, you know that there's a period of 7 days, right? Shiva. 7 days where you don't go to work, you sit on the floor. This is the mitzvot of Avelut. Also, within that, the Talmud says the first 3 days are for crying, they say. There's a custom until today that only the closest friends and relatives go to the Shiva on the first 3 days. People are still want a little more privacy, but it's in the halakha, it's mentioned as part of the Shiva. After the Shiva is over, we go back to work. Can't sit on the floor all day. Do you forget your parent? Do you forget your relative? Keep them with you. There's some rules of mourning which apply. What do you do? For 30 days, you don't shave. You don't get a haircut. You don't go to weddings for the first 30 days. But you do go to work and you do go about your regular daily business, and you can leave the house and you sit on a regular chair. It's coming back to life. It's there, but it's less intense. Then there's a period called the period of the 12 months, right? The year of Avilut. First year, if it's your father and mother, there's a custom that you don't go to weddings for 12 months. So there's like this sort of slowly dissipating intensity of the mourning. Gets slower. After the 12 months, once a year you say Kaddish. You remember when you go to the cemetery. The example is, I don't know, did you ever ride a bike, Hananel? You know how to ride a bike? Your father taught you? Your father taught you how to ride a bike? A blessed memory. Good memories? And sometimes though, when you ride a bike, you fall. Especially when you're starting out. Good morning, Shmuel. When you ride your bike, sometimes you fall and you get wounded. You get blood spurting everywhere on your arm or in your elbows, wherever it is, your knees. Yeah, you know how to ride a bike?
Yeah, this is my first accident. That's why I have a bumpy lips in the...
Oh my gosh, until today. So what do you do when you get a wound? Someone comes over, takes care, they take some tissues, stop up the blood, and they put it on, they wrap it up quickly, right? First aid. Then you go to the nurse or the doctor, you come home and you put some antiseptic on it. And then if you need stitches, the doctor puts in stitches. And sometimes they give you a little bit of ointment, a little bit of cream, maybe antibiotic, so you don't get an infection. But you don't need such a big bandage anymore. Then you could just put on like a smaller patch type of bandage as the wound heals. And then maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, you go back, maybe the stitches disappear, maybe you don't need such a big bandage anymore. It's just a scar, so you put a Band-Aid on it. Just a Band-Aid, that's a plaster. So then another week, another 2 weeks, Baruch Hashem, Hashem heals us. Amazing mechanism that He built into our bodies. And then after that, you don't need any Band-Aid at all. The wound heals. There's no danger of infection anymore. It doesn't really hurt. But what's left is a scar. Sometimes you're left with a scar for life. But that's part of life. You go about your life and you continue. So this is a good example for the laws of mourning. New mourning. At the beginning, it's the most intense. The rabbis, they throw the book at you with laws and restrictions and customs of mourning. You sit on the floor, you don't work, and you're saying prayers. There's even a special meal, a mourner's meal, when you come back from the cemetery. And of course, you don't shave. There's lots of laws. As you go on, after the 7 days are over, some of the restrictions are lifted. You don't need such a big bandage anymore. Maybe a Band-Aid is enough. So you don't shave for 30 days. You don't get haircuts. But you still have some measure of commemoration. You say the Kaddish for a parent for 11 months. Until you go back to life. But the bottom line is, it's part of bringing back to life. You could go through life with a scar, but that's the way life works. So this is a beautiful parable for the laws of mourning. But this is all true about something called new mourning. Halakha recognizes that there is a system, a parallel system of old mourning. Old mourning. Of course we mourn for the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We even sit on the floor. We're going to see the laws of Tisha B'Av soon. Very intense laws. We have a mourner's meal. We mentioned it yesterday. Seudah Mafseket. We sit on the ground and we eat mourner's food. And then we also don't cut our hair. We just talked about it. 3 weeks we don't have haircuts. Shaving, we discussed it. We're seeing some more laws now. We're going to see them today. But I'll tell you, you know what's interesting? Rav Soloveitchik pointed out that the sages realized that we are not so connected to the Beit HaMikdash. It happened 2,500 years ago. So we have to bring you into the mourning until you don't start off with Tisha B'Av. You get to the most intense point of mourning only after 3 weeks of build-up. We start off with some measure of mourning. We call that the 3 weeks, right? As we get closer to Tisha B'Av, we said there's a marking called 9 days, right? The first of Av, the 9 days. Within that, we said there's the week of, right? The week of Tisha B'Av. And finally, we have the 9th of Av itself. We have more and more laws, more and more commemorations of the mourning as we get closer to Tisha B'Av. That's what we've been describing up to now. Sages were trying to describe for us what mourning is like for an old mourning. It's the opposite. It's like an educational seminar. We're training you to be sensitive, to be aware that we're missing something. You have to think about it until you can get used to the idea and get into it. So ultimately, finally, the We get into it really so extremely intensely on Tisha B'Av. We sit on the ground, and there's other laws, as we're going to see. We've been starting with the top. We've been starting some customs of mourning. It starts off, we said in the Mishnah times that there was a special haftarah of destruction for 3 Shabbatot. Another custom we saw that, okay, during the week of Tisha B'Av, it says in the Talmud not to eat, cut your hair, and to eat meat and drink wine. Really, according to the Mishnah, it's only on the eve of Tisha B'Av, that meal, the last meal, that you're not allowed to have meat and wine. But the Jewish communities took upon themselves more and more customs. The Ashkenazi world, we don't get married for the full 3 weeks. We don't have celebrations. We don't have dancing and joy and music. Right? We talked about all that. But essentially what the sages are trying to do is to bring us to the most intense experience of mourning, which is perhaps not so natural because it's so long ago. It's hard to feel it like you feel it when your relative dies. That's new. That's right there. That's very real for you. Something that's such a historical memory, very hard to make it real. You want me to sit on the floor and cry for this building from 2,500 years ago? You can't just turn off the switch of your tears. You have to train yourselves. Get used to it. Think about these ideas over the course of time in a more and more intense fashion until you reach Tisha B'Av, and then we're like mourners. So it's the opposite diagram. So what I'm describing now is perhaps the Jewish way of mourning. These 2 parts of the Jewish way of mourning, you know what it looks like? To me, it looks like nice, huh? The Magen David. We have both types of mourning, and this is the Jewish way in life and death and mourning. There's a book by Maurice Lamb, The Jewish Way in Death and Mourning. It's a classic. So let's continue. We are, I'd say, on our chart, we're somewhere over here. We're on our path. We put those 2 together, right? Yes, sir. Hananel. I didn't understand the question. What do you say? Yeah. So we started to talk about it. We're going to talk more about it, but you missed a few days. What we said is that the fast of the 17th of Tammuz is one of the minor fasts, right? We said there's 1 major fast and 3 minor fasts. So what makes it minor is that we only have the fast during the daytime, not at night, and that we only don't eat and drink. We only don't eat and drink, but the other parts of fasting on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av that we don't do. Washing, anointing, wearing leather shoes, prohibition of sexual relations, all those other things are only on Tisha B'Av. So for Shiva Savar Tammuz, it's pretty much only eating and drinking. You're permitted to do everything else. Learning Torah is a unique feature of Tisha B'Av. We'll get to that. That's also only Tisha B'Av, and it's only certain parts of Torah. But we're going to discuss that soon. All right, so let's open up our books. I think we have to make a Chinese version of the Magen David. Doesn't it have a 6-pointed star in China? It's pretty. You like this idea, Israel? Yeah. The different stages. We put them together. We get a Magen David. All right. So page 168, I think, is where we left off. And we're already dealing with the customs of the 9 days. 168. Zachariah, why don't you start us off?
Building and planting during the 9 days. Since we curtail our joy at the beginning of Av, one may not build anything that brings joy during the 9 days. For example, one may not expand one's house or porch unless there is a vital need for this. In addition, one may not plaster or paint walls in one's home, because these are considered luxuries that make one happy and one can live without them. Similarly, one may not do renovations that are designed to beautify one's home, like shutters, closets, curtains, or anything else that is valuable, brings one joy, and is not absolutely necessary. However, one who lives with his family in a cramped living space may build an additional room during the 9 days. One may also engage in any type of construction that is designed to prevent damage. For example, if a wall is up class, one may demolish it, early fashion, or build it, even if he does not need the room where the wall is located, and there's no danger involved because this prevents damage to the property. Likewise, one may build, plaster, or paint for the sake of a mitzvah, such as building a synagogue or a school. Khan states that anything that is necessary for the public good is considered for the sake of a mitzvah and is permissible. Similarly, one may not plant anything that brings one joy, like decorative trees, hedges, or flowers. However, one may maintain a decorative garden, water the garden, mow the lawn, and continue regular maintenance. Any planting that has an actual purpose is permissible. Therefore, one may plant fruit-bearing trees during the 9 days. Similarly, one who makes a living growing decorative bushes and flowers may plant them in his nursery in order to sell them.
Okay, so before this we saw that there's a few examples of joyous, extremely joyous activity. We said getting a haircut, that's something joyous. We said putting the warp strings on the loom, that's something that doesn't happen every day. Okay, we said there's a special reason for that because the word for warp strings is shati, which is the same word as Evan Hashtiyah, the rock of the foundation stone, which is underneath the temple. Okay, so those are unique examples. Also, we said maybe refraining from meat and wine. That's definitely a joyous, special activity. The custom is only to prohibit it during the 9 days. Why is it more special than others? We said two reasons. One, the Tehillim, the holy writings speak about how wine gladdens the heart, meat and wine gladden the heart, and also there was korbanot from meat and wine. Like in the story I told you about those group who decided to become vegetarian, and but we're not vegetarian the whole year. It's only for this short amount of time. But there's specific joyous activities which the sages related to, and they said don't do that during the 9 days. One example that we learned about here is renovations and planting. I think the original context is to plant like a beautiful garden. Like the kings have gardens, right, with beautiful hedges. The estates, they have all sorts of sculptures and beautiful. So we're in some ways there are rich people today that find we may not have miles and miles and acres of gardens, but if you have a front porch, a front garden, a little garden around your house, you're lucky, and it brings you joy to put beautiful flowers and trees. If it's just there for aesthetics, this is a part of life, a part of joy, which is a little bit inappropriate for this time of the 9 days. Not only building something or planting something which is for joy. And I remember once I went to the bank. Remember that? You used to go to the bank to do some banking. Now you do it all on the phone or the computer, right? You don't have to go there and wait. But anyways, I was going to the bank, and I was doing some fixing in my house. I was a young rabbi in training, and you got to get to the bank when it's open. So I was doing some fixing in my house. I was wearing my dirty work clothes, but I wanted to get to the bank before it closed. So I'm standing there in the bank waiting online, and the rabbi of the town comes in, and he sees me in my work clothes. Maybe I was painting. I don't remember exactly the details. And he says to me, "What is this? You're painting before Tisha B'Av during the 9 days?" So I had my answer ready. What was my answer? This is not a type of renovations of joy. I'm not adding a garden or doing anything for pure aesthetics. It was something that needed fixing, something that had to be done. And so that's allowed. If it's not binyan shel simcha, if it's not construction, which is considered to be a luxury, and you can live without it, then it's something that's not just to beautify your home. You have a cramped living condition, and you need to rearrange the space. Of course, you're allowed to take care of whatever business you need to do. That's not considered to be just an extra luxury. All right? Continue with the laws of building during the 9 days on page 169. Okay, Shemua, will you take over?
Also building during 9 days. A Jewish contractor and Jewish workers may continue building residential homes during the 9 days in order to sell them, because the units are designed as living quarters and not as luxury homes. In addition, this is their livelihood. Furthermore, if they are building houses in the land of Israel, it fulfills a mitzvah. Plastering and painting, however, should be postponed until after 9 days, unless this will cause excessive loss. One who plans to build or install something superfluous in his home must stipulate with the contractor that he will refrain from working during the 9 days. If, however, he mistakenly neglected to do so, he should ask the contractor to stop during this period of work. Then, if the contractor accepts his right to continue working, there's no need to break the contract with him. This is MB 55112 and 55124. And a Jewish painter or plasterer may not work on another Jew's home during 9 days. However, he may work on the home of a non-Jew. If he guaranteed that he would finish painting Jew's home, saying that he could complete the job before the 9 days, but if he's able to do so in the end, he should ask the customer to exempt him from working during this period. He should even offer to pay the customer a small compensation. However, if the Jewish customer refuses to accept this, and the worker is afraid that he will sustain great loss by having to pay a large compensation, he may continue working during the 9 days. For scheme, they generally rule that one should not occupy a new apartment, whether it is owned or rented, during the 9 days. However, if following such a ruling will cause great financial loss, one may occupy the apartment.
Okay, so we limit, as we said this is the custom. This is when the Av starts, we limit our joy. What are intensely joyous experiences? Well, building a new house, entering a new house that's been built, and painting and plastering the walls, that's beautifying it. So if possible, we avoid it. If there's great loss, there's room to be flexible, especially in the land of Israel. Here, fixing up a place of residence is a mitzvah. It's not just because you want to move and you want to be convenient, relocated in your new place. Every time we develop this land, it's a mitzvah. So there's room to be lenient if you can't arrange it otherwise. What about business? Okay. Yosef, page 170. Let's continue.
Close a business transaction during the 9 days.
Figurative joy is business transaction during the 90s. That is to say, one may not buy luxury items like jewelry, clothing, fancy appliances, new furniture, or a car for personal use. Throughout the 3 weeks, one may not purchase anything that would require him to recite Shechiana. However, if it is something that does not require to recite Shechianu, like a garment that still needs alteration or a jointly owned piece of furniture, one may buy it until the first of Av. Explanation about section 7. During the 9 days, however, one should refrain from purchasing things that bring joy. Therefore, one may not order a new garment from a tailor. The same applies to all items that bring one joy if Shechianu is recited over it. One may not purchase it during the 3 weeks, but if Shechianu is not required, one must only refrain from buying it during 9 days. However, if one comes across an opportunity to buy an item that brings joy at a bargain price and is afraid that he will lose this opportunity if he waits until after the Shabbat, he may purchase it during the 9 days. However, it is best to bring it home or begin using it only after the Shabbat.
So, some stores you see in Israel, they're so aware of this law, and they know that their customers are religious Jews. So you know what they do during the 9 days? They make a special sale. Only during the 9 days. If you don't buy it now, you won't be able to buy it at this price again. And so the halakha says you're allowed to, because otherwise you'll be losing money. But if it's the same price and you don't have the bargain, so that's a loophole. That's really maybe even abusing the halakha, trying to turn the 9 days into a shopping time, when it's really, the whole point is that you shouldn't be making purchases because they're so joyous. So again, we're sort of ahead of ourselves here. This is the law he's talking about. During the 3 weeks, you have to avoid saying Shechianu. If you can purchase something without saying Shechianu, no problem. The 9 days, even just purchasing it, the new item, even if you're not going to use it, or it's something that's for joint use, where you wouldn't say the Shechianu, you'd say the Hatov Amiti. Still, during the 9 days, it's inappropriate, if possible. If it's something that's joyful, we said before, if it's just household items, there's no problem. Here he says, in the next section at the bottom of page 170, he said it is preferable, it's a big chumrah, I don't know where he gets this, it's preferable, go ahead.
It's preferable to curtail even ordinary and joyous transactions. For example, if one usually makes the big shopping trip and stocks up on food and household items only once every few weeks, he should ideally do so before or after the 9 days.
Based on Shulchan Aruch, or Mishnah Berurah. Interesting. So we should try to avoid it, even if it's household items. It's just not necessarily fun. I guess the experience of shopping and having filling up your closets, your storeroom, maybe that's too joyous as well. But for the sake of a mitzvah, who's buying tefillin soon? For the sake of a mitzvah, he continues to say, you can purchase. Go ahead. One may buy
joyous items if they are needed for the sake of a mitzvah. Therefore, one may purchase tefillin or Torah books during this period because they are mitzvah accessories and because one customer does not recite Shechianu over them. B'diavad, one who does not have canvas or rubber shoes for Tisha B'Av may buy them during the 9 days. Merchants who deal in luxury items that brings joy, like jewelry and fancy clothing, may do business during the 9 days in order to avoid losing their customers and thereby incurring great financial loss. However, if they should try to engage mainly in preparation for transaction that will take place after the 9 days, one who is able to close his store for the duration of 9 days without incurring significant financial loss should do so.
Pretty extreme. If you're dealing with luxury items, this is not the time for buying luxury items. Might as well close the store, and why get anybody involved? But the truth is, nowadays, we live in a mixed community where there's Ashkenazim and Sephardim, and many Sephardim only have these laws the week of Tisha B'Av, which could be a day, 2 days, 3 days. But from Rosh Chodesh, you can sell even luxury items, even if you're Ashkenazi. If you're selling them to a Sephardi, he doesn't limit himself in that way. Although there are different customs. In any case, if there's not significant loss, it's best not to be dealing with just this. Like I said about the fast day, you weren't here, Hananel. Says if you have to eat, if you're a kid, if you have kids, and you're going to give them food, don't give them ice cream, right? This is a fast day, so it's not a time for spoiling them with special, very exciting food. Same thing with purchases. If you have to go shopping, you go shopping. You need what if it's not something that you're going to say shechianu on, but ideally you're not going to be buying your new stereo or your new your new suit, your new dresses during that period of time. The Seder, so we have purchases. Yes?
Also, during these 9 days, even you get the new things or new clothing, you also cannot say Shekin Yanu on Shabbat.
It's a good question. There's only one Shabbat, right, in the 9 days. Right? There's a Shabbat every 7 days. So one, it could be two. It could be two, actually. One of them might actually be the 9th of Av. Shabbat, sometimes it falls out. The Tisha B'Av last year, I think, it fell out on Shabbat. If I'm not mistaken. In any case, so during those 9 days, you're asking me, again, what are you asking me about? Can you say Shechianu? Can you say Shechianu? It's the big debate amongst the poskim. Many people feel that, first of all, remember, this whole idea not to say Shechianu comes from Sefer Hasidim. Sefer Hasidim, we talked about it, the pious group in the 13th century in Germany. They had a lot of unique customs which were very special to them, but it became accepted. Pretty much everybody tries to avoid saying Shechianu at this time period, just because it feels wrong to say, oh, thank you Hashem for letting me live to see these times. These times? These times are not so joyous. I'm so happy to be celebrating these times. These times are times of mourning. And so it's inappropriate to say Shechianu. So that's why we avoid it if possible. We said that during the 3 weeks, if you have a new fruit and you can't avoid it, you don't have a refrigerator to save it for later, you should have the new fruit and make the Shechianu. It's not prohibited. But if possible, push it off to Shabbat. Shabbat, everybody agrees you could do it. Now, Shabbat during the 9 days is your question. What if you want to purchase during the 9 days? Well, we should limit it more and more. As we say, it gets more intense. The morning gets more intense. Some poskim allow it on Shabbat even during the 9 days, and some poskim don't. They say, no, you should have to wait or even miss out on the new thing. If it's during the 9 days, you should be more careful about this custom from Sefer Hasidim. So it's a debate. If you're not sure what to do, if it's very important to you, I think you can be lenient, because as I said, it doesn't come from the Talmud. This is not a law. It's a custom from the Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. But if it doesn't bother you too much, push it off. It's just another few days. And then you'll wear your new shirt, or you'll have your new fruit, or whatever it is. Nowadays we have refrigerators, and I assume you have another shirt. You have a regular shirt. You don't have to have a new shirt, or whatever it is. It's best. We had an issue when we bought our first car as a young couple, and we ordered it. Our parents helped us out, and we ordered it through this agency. And they call us up and they say, well, your car's ready. It was the 9 days. What do we do now? The car's been pre-ordered. I didn't want it to be during the 9 days, but it was delivered. It was like, I want to meet you here and here. Give over the car. I didn't know what to do. But I didn't think I could push it off either, because, that's the way the business works. So, and I can't say, get it from him on Shabbat. It's a car. I can't use the car on Shabbat. So I didn't know what to do. In the end, I felt that I had no choice, and I just did it. But we didn't. We didn't. So we got the car, but we didn't drive it until the next week, until after Tisha B'av. If I remember correctly, that's what we did. We did pick it up, but we didn't use it. That way, I can't remember. We probably should have said a Shechianu. I don't know why not. Or actually, it was for me and my wife and our family. And by that time, we had already had 3 children. Our first car, we had 3 car seats for our children before we even had a car. Because sometimes we would get lifts or we would get, take a lift, but we needed a car seat for the babies. So I think we did pick up the car because also maybe we needed it for the kids. That's why we got it, to be able to get to the doctor, to get to the family, and all sorts of events. But there's room to be flexible because the origins of this is not a law from the sages. It's a custom based on Shechianu. But this last thing, this last passage that we've been learning is not so much about the Shechianu. It's more about the business transaction itself. Like you can imagine, some purchases are very exciting, very happy. You get a new car. Even if you don't say the Shechianu, you're happy when you pick up the new car. And even if you're making a business deal, you're signing a deal for $1 million, you're happy, even though it means that you're going to have to work and you're going to have to provide the service, whatever it is. But you close the deal, you're very happy. So what did we say? That we minimize our joy. We curtail our joy somewhat. But it's a little bit hard to define what somewhat curtailing your joy means. We've been trying to, Rabbi has been showing us the standard approach of the poskim, but of course every case is a little different and the circumstances are different. Nobody said that you have to close your store for 9 days. He says if you happen to have a store which is all about luxury items and there's not going to be too much financial loss, then perhaps that's ideal. It's a little bit of a chumrah. I'm surprised he says that. But usually you go about your regular business and you try to push off whatever especially joyful parts of the business you can. All right? So hopefully that gives you a better answer. There's a debate about the saying the Shechianu on Shabbat. Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbat during the 9 days is usually called Shabbat Chazon because of the Haftarah. It starts with the word Chazon. It's the last of the 3 Haftarot of destruction, of sadness. The 3 Haftarot of sadness. The last one is from the first chapter of Yeshayahu, Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amot. And we're going to see, if we ever get to the next chapter, we're going to see that there is customs of mourning that start already, even on Shabbat, as we get closer and closer to Tisha B'av. So the atmosphere of the mourning colors even the Shabbat. We do eat meat and wine and drink wine during the 9 days on Shabbat. We said that yesterday, but there's still some customs of mourning. So that's why there's a debate whether you could say the Shechianu or not on Shabbat Chazon. Shabbat Chazon is the one during the 9 days. Okay? Laundry. Page 172. For many people, this is the hardest thing, especially if you have a family with lots of little kids and they don't have enough clothes. They change their clothes 2 or 3 times a day because they get dirty all the time. They're always playing or dripping on themselves or spilling or... right, that could be a problem, yeah.
In Jerusalem,
yeah.
The shop will open or close.
Open.
But who can buy it?
So if you're buying something that's a necessity, socks, underwear, we said is fine. You don't make a shechianu on that anyways. Shoes, most people don't make a shechianu on shoes. So you can buy shoes. Yeah, it's a unique feature of shoes. There's something about it. It's men and women. Even women don't say shechianu on shoes. I know women like to have lots of shoes to match their outfits. But and if you're buying for someone else, if you're buying for work, if you're buying, not everything do we say shechianu on. And so, yeah, the stores are open. The stores are open. Also, Sfaradim, they don't have this law for 3 weeks, only for 9 days, and some of them only for the week of Tisha B'Av, even 4 days, 5 days. It's not a full 9 days. And so, also, there are many people who are not religious, who don't know about Jerusalem, about mourning, about these laws. And so they want to shop. If every other store on the street stays open, they all selling their wares, but you close. You're going to lose your customers. People would want to come to you because they know you, but if you're closed, they're going to go to the other store. So it could be long-term damage to your business if you don't stay open. There's some places in malls, for example, where it's in the contract. You must remain open on all the days. So it depends on the situation. Sometimes you can't close your store because it'll be too much of a loss. And so you hope that your customers will be Sfaradim or that they'll be aware and not saying the Shechianu during the 9 days. But it's not prohibited to do commerce. It's not prohibited to work. It's a mitzvah to work. But we try to avoid the most joyous types of commerce and work. Okay? Make sense? So yeah, the stores are all open. Tisha B'Av, hopefully they'll be closed. Tisha B'Av in Israeli workplace, it's interesting. There's the laws, the labor laws say that there are a few days a year that you have to be closed. You're not allowed to be open on Yom Kippur. You're not allowed to be open on the festivals. It's the labor laws. You're not allowed to be open on Shabbat unless you pay double or whatever it is. But there's 2 days a year which are you get to choose. If you're a worker, you have to come to work every day. The factory says you don't come to work, you lose your job. But they can't make you work on Yom Kippur. They can't make you work on the Chagim. They can't make you work on Shabbat. There's 2 days which are considered to be a choice in the Israeli labor laws. One of them is Tisha B'Av. If you want, you can take the day off. They can't force you to work. But that's a day of choice. The other one, anyone want to guess? It's a little bit funny because it's so old, outdated. But who made these labor laws? The beginning of the state. A lot of the people in charge of the workforce were socialists. It's May Day, May 1st. It's the celebration of communism, socialism, from Lenin and yeah, that socialist movement who created the labor laws. They said, "Oh, it's not you don't have to take a holiday, but you can if you want to." That and Tisha B'Av, you get to choose one of those days. Nowadays, nobody celebrates May Day except for some crazies. What's that?
Some people that want to break from work.
Well, but if you take the break on that day, then you're going to have to work on Tisha B'Av. Oh, it's one or the other. I might not be remembering precisely how the law works, but it's an interesting quirk of Jewish history. The Tisha B'Av and May Day. So they knew enough that it's a day that probably Jewish people should remember Jerusalem. It's part of our national consciousness, our national memory, our historic memory. But they put it on the same level as May Day. But Baruch Hashem, we've been keeping Tisha B'Av for a couple thousand years now. And May Day, as I said, already nobody keeps it. After the fall of communism, almost nobody. There's a few diehard leftists who are still believers. But unfortunately, that social experiment didn't work out so well for the millions and millions of people who were killed and died under communism. So might have been, it is a good theory. There's some elements which we can take from it, but celebrate it as a holiday, I think is, I'd rather celebrate Tisha B'Av. Okay, so the next topic is laundry. The sages. All right, Stephen, want to read for us?
No,
Yeah. Sorry, Benjamin. It was
one question. Karl Marx was you?
Karl Marx, I believe, was a Jew, yeah. Yeah, the Jews were so involved in so many of these new political movements in the 20th century. It's unbelievable. Something about the Jewish people that is just, some people would say it's divine. God created this nation with a very unique character. The fact that He chose us and that and it's two stages. We have His Torah and we have His mitzvot. But apparently the Maharal says, explaining at the beginning of Pirkei Avot, every Shabbat afternoon we read Pirkei Avot, at least between Pesach and Shavuot. Some people continue throughout the summer. But before we read the chapter, we say the Mishnah, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba. All of Israel has a portion in the world to come. Shneimar.
Is the Temple Mount open on Shabbat?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people that go up there?
There are. Yeah. In any case, Maharal explains, why do we say that before? Why don't you just start reading the Pirkei Avot, the Mishnayot and Avot? Why do you preface it with this unique statement that all of the people of Israel have a portion in the world to come? He says, because we have to understand that there's three levels. What does Pirkei Avot talk about? It talks about midot, it talks about good character traits, it talks about musar, it talks about ethical behavior, and of course you have to have ethics. But even before that, don't think that the Jewish people were chosen because they're the most ethical people. They were chosen by God because God chose the Jewish people. He decided to designate the children of Abraham to be His treasured people. And then, the next stage you build on that is that we have to become experts in morality. We have to become experts in ethical behavior. And then, what do we say after Pirkei Avot? When we study Pirkei Avot, the custom is at the end of every chapter, every time we finish, we say, Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia Omer, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael, Lefichach harba lehem Torah mitzvot. God wanted to give the Jewish people a merit, and therefore He gave them lots of Torah and mitzvot. So we say there's three stages. There's the inherent quality of the Jewish people created by God as a special people. Then they have to work on our midot to make sure that we are behaving with basic morality. And then on top of that, we have the third stage of Torah and mitzvot. Many people go straight to Judaism equals Torah and mitzvot. So Rav Kook, following on the heels of the Maharal, explains that there's two parts of being Jewish. One is, of course, the choice. We can choose to practice our Judaism, to express our Judaism, to keep the laws of Judaism. That's a choice. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. But then there's an element of being a Jew, which is inborn. It's natural. Once you're a Jew, you're a Jew. You are part of this special nation. Whether you put it in practice every day or not, that's part of the choice part of being Jewish. But there is an inherent quality of belonging to the Jewish people, as being chosen people. And why do I say all this? What were we talking about? Thank you. There was a question about Marx. So what I was trying to say is that it's an amazing phenomenon. Also, the Nobel Prize winners. I think we're 0.05 or 0.02% of the world population, and we're like 20% of the Nobel Prize winners. That's unbelievable. Are Jews. Well, wait, the Nobel Prize is not about Judaism. It's not about Torah, and it's not about mitzvot. Apparently, Hashem has created this nation of Israel, which is so unique and has such qualities which are probably good for the world. We're pushing forward the advancement of the world in science and political philosophy and in medicine and all areas, and even in literature, all areas, even if it's not the Nobel Prize in Judaism. Somehow the Jews are very good at that, at many things. And political movements, ideologies, they always had a lot of Jews as part of the major movers and shakers in all the isms. It's a little bit sad because we'd rather the Jews be experts at Judaism, or not rather. In addition, it would be great if all those Nobel Prize winners were also putting their best talents to their unique Jewish contribution to the world. But every contribution to the world is important as well. And Karl Marx was an amazing philosopher. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out so pretty, like we said.
It's not to be polite, to make it politics a little bit,
Okay.
but every social movement is the hand of the Jew.
Yeah, almost. It seems like it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. In the 20th century, for sure, there's Jews involved in every social
Even
movement.
the most Stalin, the murder,
Yeah,
he have consultants with
Jews, right? It's true. It's true. Yeah. For better or for worse, as they say. Okay, anyways, back to laundry. Laundry. Stephen, you're going to read for us. Why did the sages prohibit laundry? Go ahead. Boker Tov, Shalom, Boker Tov.
I'd like to say Boker Tov to you.
Shalom
And
Aleichem.
we're also very much in pain that we lost a dear soldier last time.
Yes.
Who grew up in Israel. And we studied here in the Israeli department for a certain period of time. And we mourn, I'm sorry to hear that terrible news. His mother or father is teacher in the school system. They don't. Father? I don't know the person, maybe by face, I don't know him. I must just do a quick registration, so I'm begging your pardon, then we're going to have Rabbi down introduce it.
I didn't know. For today, we set a time? I didn't catch that. Didn't catch that. Okay.
I want to just write down quickly.
Yeah, might as well stop the recording.